Hello, I'm David Hughes. Welcome to Your Perfect Body, the podcast of the Esoteric Teaching community.
So today's selection continues from yesterday, entitled, What Are We Doing? Part 2. As we discussed yesterday, everyone is trying to attain a perfect body. Everything we do is calculated to position ourselves in relation to the qualities, possessions, designations, or relationships appropriate to our conception of a perfect body. This is the method of association, which has a serious handicap. The material body is not really the self. So even if we are able to successfully position ourselves in relation to the qualities, possessions, relationships, and designations of a perfect body according to our conception, all we have is a collection of symbols. Our material body will still get old, become diseased, and die, and there is nothing we can do to change that. We make the mistake of identifying with the material body because our ontology, the collection of stories we tell ourselves to explain life, the universe, and everything, is inadequate to explain consciousness, the principal symptom of our actual identity as spirit soul. Consciousness is so important that in the absence of consciousness, there are no other issues. If the value of everything ultimately comes from consciousness, shouldn't we be paying a lot more attention to it? Consciousness is not a thing in itself, but a quality of the spiritual living entity or soul. Consciousness is a quality of the spiritual being, not a material object. Therefore, when consciousness becomes identified with a material body, it is in an abnormal ontological condition. The category and quality do not match. Consciousness as a spiritual quality is eternal, and the material body is temporary. We need a process of self-realization to correct this abnormal ontological condition. The goal of self-realization is to enter into our actual eternal spiritual identity beyond this material body. The method of association cannot help us with this, but in material conditioned consciousness, the method of association is all we know. Fortunately, the esoteric teaching provides the solution to this existential quandary. First, the esoteric teaching puts us into relationship with spiritual qualities, objects, activities, and designations. This is actually what every bona fide religious culture tries to do more or less successfully. But since the esoteric teaching makes this process of spiritual association completely deliberate and conscious from the very beginning, it is very powerful. But this is only the beginning. The second stage of the esoteric teaching is a comprehensive process of ontological education and adjustment. This literally changes our consciousness from material to spiritual, and actually allows us to rediscover our perfect, eternal spiritual body. How does this work? We all have a perfect spiritual body right now, but because we are in material consciousness, we don't realize it. This is because the quality of our consciousness is determined by our ontology. If a symbol or experience is not present in our ontology, we cannot recognize its meaning. We tend to assume that anything meaningless is unimportant, and so we tune it out. When we encounter an experience that does not fit anywhere in our ontology, we tend to overlook it. For example, most people do not understand the calculus. So if I started talking in terms of the mathematical concepts of the calculus, most of you would simply tune me out, no matter how important or useful the information I was providing. Similarly, people have spiritual experiences all the time. Since we are spiritual beings, this is only natural. But since we have no ontological information on spiritual life, we tend to tune these experiences out and overlook them. Thus, our ontology strongly influences our consciousness in terms of the value and importance we assign to our experiences. By the process of ontological education and adjustment, the esoteric teaching provides a platform for properly evaluating our spiritual experiences. And by also giving us the tools to cultivate spiritual association, it provides a controlled laboratory environment for those spiritual experiences. Thus, the esoteric teaching is a scientific approach to self-realization. Nevertheless, it does require faith. Everything does. Even getting up in the morning requires some degree of faith that the effort is worthwhile. Similarly, the esoteric teaching requires sufficient faith in its methods to give them a fair, objective trial. You need enough faith to perform the experiment and observe the result. We hope to kindle that faith by these discussions. Right now, the only faith required is to stay connected, download the next installment of our podcast, and give it a listen. 10 minutes out of your day. About as much faith as it takes to floss and brush your teeth. You do floss and brush your teeth, don't you? Before I have a right to ask for more than that, you have a right to know what I'm doing and why. That's why I'm explaining the methods of the esoteric teaching before trying to get you to perform them. I'm trying to help you realize your perfect body. That body is not material, but spiritual. Material bodies do inconvenient things like getting old and sick and dying. But our spiritual bodies are perfect in every way. In the next few installments, I'll talk some more about consciousness, the nature of the soul, and the benefits of realizing your perfect body. So there's a little time left, and I would like to use that opportunity to say a little bit more about the process of the esoteric teaching for you podcasters. This is going beyond the scripted part that's available on the blog. The two processes of the esoteric teaching, namely the process of spiritual association and the process of ontological education and adjustment, actually go on simultaneously. It's very easy to put ourselves into spiritual association, and in our next couple of episodes we'll go into how you can do that simply by changing your viewpoint on some things. And a little bit more difficult is to re-educate our ontology because it's deficient in so many ways, especially if we have a spiritual background in some mundane religious faith. Then our ontology of spiritual things is going to be complicated by the different ideas that we have absorbed in the past about spiritual things and how they should work. So we may have to unlearn some things in order to absorb a more balanced and scientific viewpoint on the soul. So we'll spend the next few episodes talking about the soul, about consciousness, about its different qualities and functions. And hopefully that will give you a basis for starting to understand who you really are. That's really what this is all about, because we are not these material bodies. We are the soul that temporarily inhabits them. And when that soul leaves the body, of course, it has a tendency to drop dead very quickly. So the soul is the source of life, the seat of consciousness, and the source actually of all the energies of the body. Interestingly enough, the mind, as we usually know it, being a collection of observations and so-called facts and so on, is part of the body. And this is why we don't remember our past embodiments. This is why we don't remember our spiritual body either. So what does that mean? That means we have to be educated in all these things so that we can understand them properly. Then when we add them to our ontology, we'll begin to observe how the consciousness that we bring to every situation in our life is actually a hint of our real perfect body. So this is a very sensitive process, and it takes a controlled laboratory environment in order to observe these things at first. Later on, when our ontology becomes more robust, we can observe them at every turn in life. But in the beginning, we have to become sensitive to a whole range of experiences that we normally simply ignore because we don't understand their value or purpose. And that's why I'm taking the time to explain all these things very thoroughly. And we'll also give you simple processes to perform that will bring you into spiritual association very quickly. And all of our students